The colors are so important as you're getting to introduce new elements into any kind of piece, whether it be film or theater, because we tend to automatically put certain things in our head. If they're wearing black, they're the bad guy. If they're wearing white or a light color, they're the good guy. And that you can really control that and design a completely false narrative for a shocking reveal later.
You know who was good at doing that?
Who?
Were the Beatles.
Hmm.
I'm going to come back on you in your own musical world.
Okay.
That happens in music too, doesn't it? I mean, as a song goes along, you add something a little more interesting. You keep adding to it until the end. You come to the climax of it. And one of the things that they were so good at is they had this sense of humor about their music.
Right.
So it was kind of always bouncing around to these different kinds of places, and you'd hear this unsuspecting stuff all of a sudden. Where did that come from?
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
You see, so yeah, I think is a part of our storytelling process, is that accumulation of drama till we get to the end, so that we can make the point we want to make. I like happy stuff. That's why I like musicals.
Yeah.
I believe a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. And I think that's the way you can reach people, rather than scaring the hell out of them.
Right.
So I gravitate towards that kind of material. Not that I can't do drama, because I can, but in fact, there's always something dramatic about the pieces that I do. But there's also music and jokes and slapstick and, just common knowledge, stuff. So it really gets all over the place. That's Dev. That's what, she does. She's, as you well know, been doing it a long time and doing it very well for some big people. I mean, it's something that I think is interesting when she talks to people and they go, what have you done? Oh, I did this. And she might mention The Land Before Time. They go, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. But the thing about that is that movie made over $300 million.
I know. And she's so casual about it. I guess as the artist, you tend to think more about what the piece was that you created, and what it goes on to do kind of is something beyond you, right? So I guess you could be kind of disconnected from the outcome of it because your part was already done before that.
Here, I'm going to kind of jump here for a second.
Okay.
There's 4 things that I think you need to be an actor. So these can apply to other things. You got to have, you got to dance. And two of the most song applicable. You got to dance. You just got to dance. I got to do this. I got to do it. I remember reading a letter that Craig Allman wrote to his mother. All I want to do is this. I want enough money to pay for my rent, to put food on my table, to let me do some of the things I enjoy, and play guitar. I got to dance. The other one is you got to have miles and miles of heart.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get knocked down so many times. You're going to have to get back up, and you're just going to have to get back in and be a trooper. And a trooper means it's teamwork. You're working with the others. You got to just get in there and do it. The other one is look at me, 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 look at me. Dustin Hoffman tells a story about being with Laurence Olivier after doing The Rain. I forget what it was, the murder thing of the Nazi and all that. Anyway, afterwards, he was at a dinner thing with him, and he was sitting next to him, and one of his kids, but another one came, and they were kind of also affectionate. And Dustin Hoffman was observing this, and he goes, so I leaned over to him, and I asked him, why do we do this? Talking about acting, why do we do this? And he was doing an interview when he did it, and he got up. He said, can I get up? He goes, yeah. He walks over, and he gets right in his face, and he goes with his finger pointing back and forth, look at me, 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 look at me. That's the third thing you need. And if you look at any talented person who does what they do, they all have that look at me. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It can be a bad thing. But it is a good thing for those people because that's what they do.
Right.
And the other is talent.
Yeah.
So in acting, there's lots of people working today with the first three,
Mm-hmm.
and they do it good. They trained well. They worked hard. They've done the work. And then there's those who've done all that and they have talent. And to me, like Meryl Streep is an example of one of those types of people.
Mm-hmm.
And you bring up earlier, what's his name? You brought him up, the comedian.
Robin Williams?
Yeah, Robin. Robin, comedians can do drama.
Mm-hmm.
Drama people, not so much.
Mm.
It's a curious reality. It's just that way. Goldie Hawn, I remember hearing her quote once saying she never met a stupid comedian.
Mm.
And so that he could do what he did that because he took the time to learn the craft. And he had the best at it. And on set, I don't know who he worked with off. I mean, like Harry and Peggy always worked with stars. I remember having a conversation with Jane Fonda on Comes a Horseman once. I'd done a little thing to her, and I was apologizing in my own little way. And she goes, she says, you study acting? She asked me where it came from. I don't know, because I never said anything. And I said, yes, I do. She goes, well, who do you study with? And I said, Peggy Fury. She goes, ooh, you must be good.
Mm.
Boom, right out of her mouth.
Huh.
And because I know that she's worked with Peggy on roles.
Right.
Because, that's what you do. You get people to come in. You work on the accents. You work on these things. You start getting into stuff that's beyond who you are and making them yours.
Mm-hmm.
That's acting.
Yeah. Well, that's really the bottom line of it all is you have to convince whoever your audience is of something that isn't real.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this beautiful line in Romeo in Love, I think it is. And the producer grabs the financer, grabs the producer, shoves him against the wall. He's going to say, and he's threatening because it looks like he's about to lose his money.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, the producer goes, it's all going to work out. And he goes, how do you know that? He goes, because it just does.
Uh-huh.
And to me, that was the best line in the whole movie because it's true of theater. It just works. It's true on the movies. It just works out. I worked on low budget films for the last few years when I was working in film. And I loved it. And I loved it because there would come these situations where there wasn't the money, something happened. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And the best stuff happened.
Yeah. Well, it forces you to be creative. It forces you to think outside of the box instead of just looking at your budget to solve the problem.
Yeah, so true. So true. And they say happy accidents. Well, in low budget films, it happens a lot,
Yeah.
and it bottom line, what has instilled me is the absolute confidence that it's going to all be all right. It's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
We'll find a way. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I know it looks bad now, but trust me, it's going to be okay.
Well, I think it's become part of our nature, hasn't it, to just focus on potential doom that's not even real? What if I get sick? What if this happens? What if our actor falls out? What if? And we spend so much time with that in our headspace that we just don't do the things that we could do to prevent those things from happening or find easy fixes. We're just so consumed by doom in our society now.
Yeah, stories that we tell ourselves, right?
Right.
Those are stories that we tell ourselves. My children, my three that I've had with Dev, as they were brought up, I told them, there's a positive in every negative and a negative in every positive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fact. We are physically made of, physics speaking here, of positive and negatives. Little things in our body that are twirling around, positive and negative, that makes it all come together. So by our very physical self, we are positive and negative. And so look for the positives and the negatives because they're there. Yeah. It might not take away the pain, but it'll help. It always does. And start looking for those negatives and those positives so you can be prepared in case something happens. You can base. I just kind of chastised myself moments ago by thinking, I always storyboard everything I can when I shoot, and I thought that's because you don't trust yourself to be creative on the set. And I said, and I did it because what happens is those things happen. Well, what I want to know is here's where I'm coming from, here's where I'm going. How can I get from here to there in this moment now? Yeah. That's what I want to know. That's my problem. I always say filmmaking is solving a new problem every 15 minutes. And I'm really good at it. So my habit now is to not make any decisions about something until I have to, basically.
That makes sense.
I ask all the questions I can, and I ask a lot of questions. Sometimes it can be very annoying because I want to know if I'm going to make a decision about this. I want to know before I make it, what all the ins and outs, the positives and the negatives of it are. So it's a matter of trade-offs. So how do I want to balance that out?
That's smart, though. And I'm working with a director on a project right now that I'm probably going to be scoring. And he's been sending me a lot of questions. And he keeps telling me, I'm sorry for all the questions. And I said, look, I'd rather have you ask and know and feel comfortable than for you to worry or stress or be afraid to ask me about something. Let's just get it settled. It's the best way to not only solve a problem, but solve potential problems.
You hit on something here, Scott, that's really important. And that is clarity with the people you're working with. Because it's a creative process and it can be so inhibited. I used to like to say to people, to me, it's like you start at 6 o'clock on a clock and you're headed to 12 with your creative project. You got it all in a bundle and you're ready to rock. So you step out towards that 12 o'clock right across the dial from you. And at that moment you do that, that creative process becomes its own reality. And it's going to take you on a trip. And the best thing you can do is hold on to it, not try to make it work at 12. Focus on the direction you want to go. You will make the right choices. Keep going forward, but don't try to make it happen at 12. Let it land where at 1 or 11 it's going to be better. It is.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Just trust the process. And I had an editor once said, if John Reynolds asks you, what do you think, he's really stalling till he figures out what he wants. And I laughed, and it's partly true, but the part that she didn't get was the fact that I ask questions because I know I don't know the answer. And I know that if I put it out there, it'll come. And it doesn't mean that somebody will say the right words to say, this is what you absolutely should do. They'll say something and it'll be the right answer, but it won't be the answer they gave me. I'll know the answer. I'll just, okay, I know. Whatever they said or do would stimulate it, and I'll go, oh, that's the answer. I know what to do now. So I do that. I do that all the time. I go, so what do you think? What do you think? Because I am looking for the answer. Right. And I want to know what you think, because you can say something, it can be absolutely perfect. And that happens too. Oh, that's perfect. Let's do that. So, or, okay, I got it now. Here's what you need to do. And I do that a lot with actors. And I think the reason I do that now that I'm talking about it is because I realize they know something in their mind. They have a process in this too. So their thinking helps me understand, what the problem is. It's kind of like, once practicing guitar, somebody said once, I keep fumbling over this phrase. Every time I get there, I'm having a problem with it. And another guitar player said, the problem isn't that. It's something you're doing before that. You're not doing something right. That's why you're not getting there right. They go back and they look, oh my God, you're right. And boom, the part played out.
Well, and
so you have to roll it back sometimes.
But it's interesting that you say that, because I just saw a clip that apparently Tom Cruise had auditioned for Edward Scissorhands, and they wanted him for the part. But he was asking questions like, well, how does he go to the bathroom? How hasn't he eaten for 6 years? He couldn't wrap his head around the character. And it seems
Hmm.
to me, if you don't get the character you're portraying, then how can you make the audience believe? So if you're not comfortable with the decision, it shouldn't be made until you are.
Well, see, there you go with Johnny Depp. That's what he does. See, he just takes it as a landing space. Okay, this is who I am. Here I am today, and I'm going there from now. It's not that he hasn't done roles where he's backstoried and done his research, because he has. But for the Pirates of the Caribbean, give me a break.
Yeah.
He didn't do that. He put him in a costume. He says, "This feels good." Imitate Keith Richards,
Hmm.
and away we go. We're going to see where this takes place, where it goes, and that's what he's good at.
Yeah.
He's good at that. He also studied it with Peggy Fury.
Oh, okay.
Jeff Goldblum was there. Annette Funicello, Annette, I forget her name. Anyway, a bunch of people were there. Anyway, bottom line, that's what he's good at.
Yeah.
I'm a person. I'm a researcher.
Hmm.
But that's because I have an insatiable need to know. So I'll dig in there, and I'll dig into that. I'll clip things from that period of time. I want to know what the history was. If I'm a bowler, like Stanley Kowalski and Cat or Streetcar.
Hmm.
He's Polish and he belongs to a bowling team. Well, I need to know about bowling. I
Right.
need to know about Polish bowling teams. I need
Yeah.
to read up, where did he live? New Orleans. What period of time? Who was that? Jimmy this. And oh man, what else? The history. All of that stuff I want to know. I want to soak it up like a sponge. Because if I'm doing dialogue, that information will come to me, and
Hmm.
I'll remember the environment I'm in when I'm talking about the things I'm talking about.
Right.
And then there is depth.
Hmm.
That's the reason why when we started this last show I did with these ladies, you know, you'll learn your lines. You got plenty of time to do it by learning what your intentions are. Why are you saying this? What do you want from it? Where are you going? An actor, people they say we have our interests and we have an actor exits Shakespeare, but actors don't. Actors are coming from somewhere and they're going someplace.
Right. Yeah.
You just can't appear and already be there. You got to be coming from somewhere that brings you into a state of mind. So when you come there, you're just streamlining right through the whole scene into the next place you're going to go.
Hmm.
And the streamline you might come in that scene and redirects you, answer some questions you want to know, but you're going through it. So you're developing things. And that gets back to acting. Acting is when it goes back to listening, what happens in listening. Same thing as working on a word thing. You look at the other actor, you go, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? How does that make me feel? How do I want them to feel?
Right.
Those are the things you're constantly. So when you're listening to it, those are the things you're thinking. What am I thinking? What is she thinking? Oh, she feels like this. How do I feel about that? And I'll tell. I had a couple memorizers on this show. One of them was just not trained properly. A great actress. This girl's a great actress. She just doesn't have the craft because she's come through community, and that's not. You don't get a lot of it there. But I told her one day. I said, every time you walk on stage, you've had a different day. And you bring that day with you when you come on stage. You can't change it.
Right.
You bring it with you. So
Hmm.
you're going to have attitudes tonight that you didn't have yesterday when somebody says that to you.
Hmm.
You're still going to give the answer, but there's going to be an attitude about it that's going to be different. It'll be subtle. Audiences won't know. They'll
Right.
feel something. Why? Because you're feeling something. That's the way it works.
And the audience
You
doesn't know
know,
what it was last night because they weren't necessarily there last night. So they won't necessarily notice the difference. They'll just take that as this is what it's supposed to be because that's the only one they're experiencing.
here's something. I saw this neurologist from Stanford do a thing on TED Talks once. And he made a comment in there that when somebody sits across from you and they reach over and they pick up their coffee and lift it up to your glass, your brain says you're picking up coffee. And then your arm goes, no, we're not moving. And then your brain, never mind, that's them.
Hmm.
And that happens in an instant.
Right.
So that's a truth. That's a fact of how we biologically function.
Hmm.
So I manipulate that and give that a great deal of consideration when I'm directing. The problem I had on this stage here, it was too small to do
Oh.
any movements,
Mhm.
because I'll use movement to get people's focus so I can keep their heads moving from right to left so they don't go and, sleep on me with it.
Mhm.
So I had to make up for it in other ways
Well, that's
to,
tough because
to do that.
it limits your props, it limits your set design, it limits how many people you can have
It
on stage at a
is.
time.
Yeah. It so does. It was so frustrating. But interestingly, we set it up on a stage about 18 inches off the floor. It was 20 something inches off the platform. We didn't have a lot of space. And set it against they have a big apple barn there. It's huge.
Mhm.
And they have these big sliding wooden doors. And the one of them you can slide open, and there's nothing but the red rocks and the rest of the farm out there. It's beautiful.
Oh, wow.
So when the play would open, we timed it so that that would be happening at sunset. So when they come in and sit, the door would be closed.
Ah.
And then when every place, okay, we're going to do it, the lights would go off, the house lights, the show lights would come up. I'd go across the back and I'd open that door, and you'd hear people go, oh, and then the girls would come out and start working.
Oh,
But they did
perfect.
it against that background. And as the night background would go, the sun would go light to dark. So I lit it so that it would facilitate that
Yeah.
image,
That's
you
smart. I
know.
like that.
So you see, so that was me. Because I looked at it and went, oh my God, what am I going to do here?
Hmm.
And I thought, you know what? Let's see, what's the sunset talking? Let's see if we can. And that's what happened down. Now there's a concern. Will that work? Well, what are we going to do when we move to Mary Fisher? What are we going to do when we're over at this theater and that? What's going
Right.
to happen there? Well, it'll work out. We'll figure it out. Figure out a way to make something happen.
There you go. It's going to be
Um,
fine.
yeah, it will. We'll just have to be there. So, yeah, I think, and that gets back to script writing. Sometimes Deb will go, I want you to look at this. And I'll look at it and I'll go, what the hell does this mean?
Hmm.
And I'll go, yeah, what do you mean? What are you talking about? How are we going to do that?
Right.
Think about our limitations, what we have to do with.
Well,
So the
when I,
writer has a lot of control over that.
oh, sure. I remember when I was writing a screenplay, my director said, or my producer said to me, she said, you're writing with a limited mindset. She said, throw everything you want into the script. We'll dissect it. We'll remove or rewrite what we can't do. Like if you imagine a helicopter, put a helicopter in there. If I can't get you one, we'll rewrite it. But if you don't put it in there initially, it's never going to happen.
It reminds me of a funny story. I was directing something for Disney and a low budget thing, and I was doing my shooting in the can, cutting in the can mentality,
Hmm.
because I recognize we have low budget and our locations, so we're going to be on location. It was going to be, and what I was going to do with, we'd been out scouting and I would run into complications with it. We got back, and the line producer wanted me to write out all the shots that I was going to do, which is a mistake to do that to me because I don't know until I get there,
Right. Yeah.
because I have to see where I'm at and what we got. And then I know my equipment, I will go from there.
Hmm.
So I did that. And I wrote down helicopters. I did running car shots. I did everything. So he brings the script in and he throws it on the desk. He goes, well, we can't do those things. And I said, yeah, that's the reason why I put subject to availability at the top of it. End of conversation.
Right.
I mean, but I got us through it, and I did it by doing what I would had to deal with
Yeah.
in the moment. And it was my experience with that reality and stage that fundamentally got me through that particular shoot,
I
because it
like
ended
that
up
cheeky
being,
I like that cheeky response though. That's good.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, I you get into those places and you just got to do that. And
Mhm.
then you also get into situations where you work with actors. I gave a note to an actor once. You said that's exactly the same. I don't think you really want to do that.
Mhm.
Oh, and when he went and did it, we took it and shot it, and he did the same, and I kept it. I
Mhm.
didn't do good advice, so come on, do it better. I didn't have the time to putz with it.
Yeah.
I talked to him. He didn't take the note. I took it and I moved on.
Right.
And he saw it. He saw it, and he came up to me and he apologized.
Ah,
Yeah, oh my God, you were so right. I'm so sorry. But he was so sure of himself. And when he saw it, he realized
that's
when
interesting.
you memorize things, you create a image
Hmm.
in your mind. I will go through with this with people. I'll say every night I stand on the edge of the stage. Here's the mark, and I step off like this, and I step off with my right foot. Very definite step off every night of the show. But one night I do this, and I step off to the left, and I step on, and I go, something's wrong.
Hmm.
Something's not right. And immediately in my mind, that's whirling around back there. While I got all this other stuff in front of me, something's wrong. That's not a healthy way to start.
No, not at all.
See, and that's memorization. That's what
Hmm.
memorization does to you.
Right.
So when something changes on you, all of a sudden it's slippery slope and things mount, and it takes ever to recover if you can.
Well, and there's so much that we memorize, not just the dialogue or the stage direction, but all those little subtle things that we do with our body. We tend to, especially, you've rehearsed something a bunch of times, you've found your way to do things, maybe a certain inflection and expression you have that you don't even realize you've got. It just becomes repetitive because you've done it so many times. Now that's part of it. And anything that changes then throws off everything you do.
Yeah, that's getting into the craft,
Yeah.
and that's a bit different, actually.
Hmm.
In other words, going back to this woman I just saw, she was classically trained and she did her Shakespeare classically, and it was marvelous to watch. And every gesture was. Where she had problems was mumbling her dialogue occasionally
Mm.
because she'd get going so fast, she'd get ahead of herself. That's her memorization. That would have
Yeah.
been my note to her.
Hmm.
Here's where you did this and you did this, and why did you do that? I would ask her, how did that happen?
Right.
And I would hope she would say, well, I got to going so fast. That's right.
Hmm.
Why? Because you've memorized that part to the point that you're depending on it. You need to go back and find out what your emotional intention is with this. You need to go back over that and study that. So that it's it's not about memorizing the lines, the memorization. It's about what you have to say in the moment. Because what you do before and what you do after are solid. It's just solidly done.
Sure.
And she can recover quickly. Why? Because she had lots of training doing
Hmm.
Shakespeare over the years. But still, as a fine craftsman she is, she would have liked that note. I'm positive of it.
I would
But
imagine
it's not.
that's
Um,
the tough part about having like a one person show is that you don't have anyone keeping you on a tempo, and you could speed up and not realize that you're caught up in the moment. The crowd's excited, you're moving a little faster, you're speaking too fast and they don't understand you because you're not playing against anyone.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's knowing. Yeah, what's interesting. Dev, when she started out at Disney, she worked over there a little while. And one day, one of the writers came in and says, I'm having a problem with this part, this scene right here. Could you help me with it? And she'd go, okay, yeah. She'd sit down with it and she'd go back, go, here's to this. They go, wow, that's perfect. That's great. Oh, that
Mhm.
means I got to change this. Anyway, somebody else would come along, and pretty soon she got to be known for doing that. That's how she ended up over Universal.
Oh.
That's what got her there, is to do a rewrite, page one rewrite
Mhm.
on a movie that was going to film. What is it? I forget. Anyway, the dog one. Anyway, and she goes, "Why are they doing that? What happened there?" And I said, "Well, let's take a look at that. They're writers. Yeah, yeah, they're writers. But
Mhm.
who are you?" "Well, I'm a writer." "But who were you before you were a writer?" "Well, I was an actor." "That's right."
Mhm.
And what's important for actors is to know the thread, all the beats in line are emotional, have to be emotionally correct. And as writers, sometimes they will jump over beats because they haven't gone through the process of it.
Mhm.
If they had hit the beat they were supposed to, their character wouldn't have made that choice. They would have made the choice you made.
Right.
And that's the difference. because you're hitting the beats as an actor. What's my beat here? What's my beat there?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then and we even break it down into, in a monologue, you have stop signs, transition moments where you come to a place and you stop on something, you move on to another to help illustrate this one or to further that or whatever. But it's a change, almost like a change that takes place. It's a stop sign. You stop there and you do something. And that gives the piece up and downs. It gives it flow. It helps it move. But you got to know those. So you got to know why you're going there and how you get there, what your feelings are, you know. But it's more about why you're there than it is about your feelings there, because your feelings are going to be a little different. But why you're there will not.
Right. Right. No, that's a good point. And it really shows that the script on paper is really not a solid document. It's really the act of acting or presenting a piece is really alive and fluid.
For me, in our process and what we go through, we sit down with a reading, and then somebody go, "What do you think?" And I'll go, "Well, I'll have a better idea when it's on its legs, when it's standing up, you know, because I'm not thinking about technically. Actually, I'm listening to those things. Don't get me wrong here, but I'm more interested in the people who are reading.
Right.
Now, if we're just reading it, then I'm more focused on the script itself. And then if I see things or hear things, I'll bring them up. But generally speaking, but if it's the cast and they ask me what do I think, I'll go, I won't know until I see it on its legs. And so those readings, I'm only listening to the actors and getting a feel for them.
Right. Well, and they're not reading I mean, they can read in character to an extent, but unless you're there on set, dressed up and in the environment, you're not going to really read it like you would when you're at a table.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, in opera, when you rehearse operas and you do the parts where the actors or the opera singers are singing, which is why they're there in the scenario part, they never sing full throated.
Right.
You know, it's never done until the night of the show. And as actors, however, are not like that. Actors are always trying to be full throated because they're trying to get these things down in a certain period of time so that they can be the best they can be when it's time to be. And we generally do not have forever. Now, I know that there's an actor on the last show that we worked on that Dev's got another script she's working on, and this woman's going to be playing a part in it. And she's a television actress. She was a celebrity and all of that. Sitcoms, mostly 3-camera shows.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, she's working a lot with this actress to write the part that the actress is going to feel comfortable with, what she wants to do. Now, what the actress has done is taken what Dev has done as the blueprint of the character, who she is, where she's going, why she's going, where she's going, and she's working with that. She's not making a new character. She's taking what Dev has set down and she's working with that. That's one of the reasons why she's such a good actor.
Right.
You know, and so directing her is very different than directing the woman who sits next to her, who has to memorize everything to get there.
Well, you know, so many directors have so many challenges. I would imagine that kind of like a teacher where, you know, you've got 30 kids in the class or 25 kids in the class, and every one of them learns a different way. And you have to give each one of them individual attention on top of all the other pressures you have. That's something you need to be aware of, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's interesting. The guy who started Nativa, is that Navina? The card that went into the computers, and now he's a multi-billionaire. He's got all this stuff going. He's Chinese, moved over to America, to Kentucky when he was a child, and went to school in Kentucky. And he said it was remarkable, the difference between going to school in China and going to school in Kentucky, because in Kentucky he was allowed to stretch out. Basically, he didn't use those words, but he was allowed to stretch out. Whereas in China, he couldn't. it was really strict. You had to do this, you had to do this, you had to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of the freedom that he had that he says, that's why I am who I am today. That's why my education was so thorough and so good, because I had that opportunity here in America that I would have never had in China.
Right.
See, so that's one of the great things that we've developed in this country. However, at this particular moment, we seem to be going back. The pendulum seems to be swinging back the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows where it's going to go? It's a sad thing that people do not recognize the progress that we've made these days. But in all of that, there's theater.
Right.
And the question is, will theater exist? And my feeling is that it will always exist, no matter how technological advanced we get, because we always will need our biological selves to be in the room with the biological entities who are doing the performance. And theater might be smaller compared to the NFL, which is the same objective in its own way. Mm-hmm. I was listening to a woman talk about the fact that she married a guy from England, and they moved to England, and he was into soccer, and she had no interest in soccer in her life. And she went to soccer games, and she was amazed at the camaraderie of the whole proposition, how much they hooted together and they would work together and had fun together. Just the crowd being there was such a powerful experience. Never mind soccer. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah. So we need that biologically. We need that. So I believe that theater will always be there because of that particular reality. I'm interested in the form and shape it takes, but the storytelling process isn't going to change because it's biologically predetermined.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised to an extent that it hasn't gone online. Like, say, Broadway brings in a couple of cameras and they're shooting it live, and you can stream it. By
they do that.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, they do. In fact, I have to say right now, opera is probably existing off of that very reality. Because they can bring it onto a Sedona, Arizona, at a little theater, and they can screen it, and people get a chance to see the show that was done in Italy at the big opera house, right? So they do that, and it's being done more. But theater itself, you generally would go to television in other ways,
Right.
But they do it. But that's not going to take place. The problem I see with theater, the threat is that you take Sedona as an example. Sedona's an extremely hard room because most of the people here are not educated, theatrically speaking. You go to a big city, lots of people go to plays and stuff, they're theatrically educated. They understand what it's about. So when they go see a show, they have a certain bar. Well, here, they don't know what they're seeing until they see it. And when they see it, they go, oh, wow. Then the other thing is money. What's it going to cost to buy a ticket? If you sell tickets for $50 to $75, how many people in this area, in Cottonwood, for example, are going to afford to come here and pay $50 to sit and see a play? Well, it will depend. If there's a television actor they used to know on television is going to be in it, they're more likely to do that. But to bring a show in here, it's going to cost a whole lot more than $50 a seat to see that show. Right. That's the problem.
And the problem with that is that if you don't sell X amount of seats, then you're going into debt to do the play the way that it needs to be done to entertain them in the first place. It's such a vicious circle.
It is. That's the reason why Patrick brought in this one woman to show. He's seen it before. He's very familiar with it. So he said, this is perfect. So you come here and do that. And the Jewish Community Center, by the way, bought all the tickets and gave them out because the play is so good.
Wow.
And so anyway, which was a wonderful thing. Somebody sponsored it, is what they say, which is a wonderful thing. But bottom line, it could afford it. She could split the room, so to speak. She could afford to do that. That's the wonderful thing about a one-act show or a two-actor show or something like that. Or even three, depends on the environment. It's again, right now, Dev's looking for an idea that she can do in one location. I pointed out to her that Roman Polanski made his debut doing a movie with three people on a boat,
There you
and
go.
that's what. There you are. That's what it got him started. So then he got into the bigger, better money, as they say,
Mhm.
and so yeah, and by the way, that's real hot with people who are buying product these days.
Yeah.
Um, we want a smaller budgets. So how do you do that? Well, limit your cast and locations,
Hmm.
or your time periods even.
Yeah.
Because time periods are costly.
Hmm.
Depending on how you do it. If you do a cowboy thing in a bunkhouse, yeah, you're good. You can prop that. You can costume that. But you
Yeah.
can't ride, and you can ride off in the desert. You can cut that. But you can't ride into town and have a shootout,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
right? Yeah, it's a little big. I worked on a project once here in Sedona. They wanted to land an airplane, a biplane downtown. I mean, right on 89A, right there in West Sedona.
Hmm.
And I go, okay, well, let's look into that.
Well, I,
What's that going to cost? And the thing that shut it down wasn't the fly. I mean, we could have got the biplane to land. Physically, it was all capable of doing that. But securing the area was financially out of the question
right.
because you have to block off the streets and everything. And you're doing that for several blocks back all around the area. And then all the people that are in there are special people, stunt people, basically, so nobody gets injured or people placed in places that can't get injured.
That's what always
See, so
makes
it's
me
very
think about
complicated.
things like Christmas movies in New York, where you've got, you're out shopping in outdoor malls, or maybe you're in Times Square, and you've got thousands of people that are not part of the film all around you. You're not getting releases from everybody, and how do you coordinate something like that? It just seems like such a massive undertaking that you would just say, I'm not going to do Christmas movies.
Well, actually, what happens there is they put up signs and they notify everybody that's in that background area that they're going to be shooting that particular segment.
Mhm.
And there's a sign that notifies everybody this is what's going to happen, and there's nothing they can do about it. Now, if they're immediately on camera or right in the immediate background, that's a whole new can of worms. Those are all background people. But
Right.
there's a certain point where it's not like that at all. It's just people doing what they do, generally speaking. And then you'll have assistant PAs out there who will keep people from standing around and looking and gawking or whatever. They
Mhm.
keep it kind of moving along. So that's really complicated, but that's what they do, and it costs a bundle of money.
Yeah.
But they do it. It's pretty routine actually. They're very used to it in New York
Yeah,
or
that's
Los
that's true.
Angeles and stuff like that. They're very used to that kind of thing.
Well, John, I really have appreciated your time, and I'm sorry about all the technical problems we had in the beginning. But before we wrap up, I do have one other question, if you don't mind.
Not at
Um,
all.
Something that you mentioned earlier kind of led me to ask you about this, but one of the most important things for an actor, I would imagine, would be trust with the director. And while you're typically now working with a lot of the same people in your community, you still bring in other people, or you've worked with new people from time to time. How do you work on getting an actor to trust you as a director?
Well, I let them know that they are mine, and I mean that nobody talks to them but through me. They're protected by me. And I will make sure that their work environment is a protected environment so they can work freely in it. So I'm there to protect them. And I want nothing more from them than their best. And I will work towards that. I will work with them on getting their very best. And I do. I'm diligent at it.
Mhm.
And I'm sensitive to each one of them's personal space. Now, that's the best I can do. And then I'm just John.
Mhm.
I'm just John with them.
Nice.
And I think well, my experience so far has been, it's like the thing I worked with several people that haven't worked with me before.
Mm-hmm.
And when they left in their carpooling, all they're talking about is how wonderful a director John is.
Yeah.
I'm moved by that. I don't think I'm such a wonderful director, but I'm happy they think I am. And I'm just going to be John,
Mm-hmm.
doing what my instincts tell me in each situation needs to be done or said.
Yeah.
I do have to moderate myself sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I got a little harsh with one actress when I did it in front of others because I was left no other alternative. But I didn't have time. The showtime was coming, and I had to get her past this certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she had done another show in another area in Prescott with a bunch of cast. And one night she had them come, and that was the night she had a breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
And she sung a song. At the end of the song, she was weeping.
Wow.
And so all her cast was standing around, and this is John, the director, and nice to meet you, and all that, and how'd you enjoy? Oh, we liked it. They were all kind of moot, and I go, one of the best moments in this show for me was when Samantha had tears at the end of her song. That was so awesome.
Yeah.
And I paused for a minute. I go, well, it's nice meeting you all. Thank you. Good night. And I moved on.
Yeah.
Because I wanted them to know, in my mind, she was fabulous. She did a fabulous job. And I wanted her to know in front of her friends that I was very impressed with her show that night.
That's a classy move. I like that.
That's what I do.
Well,
that's what I do to actors. I don't do that to normal people.
Okay, I won't expect that. But it's kind of interesting because even, a play runs, say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever it's going to be, but they're short runs. You become a little bit of a family. You start your pre-show rituals, your post-show rituals, you have your moments you connect on stage, and then it's just over. And the couple of plays I've been involved in where I was an actor versus when I'm a sound engineer, because as a sound engineer, I'm very separated from the people. But as an actor, it really kind of left me feeling empty afterwards. Do you feel like that when a project's over?
No, I don't. But then I'm not acting in them.
True.
I have acted in stuff. Generally, the musical kind of stuff I've done. I'm not a singer, by the way, but I've been in them. I'm a very physical actor. I'm not surprised to have. I'm very physical. I did mime and all that stuff when I was in college and stuff. So I'm very physical and act like that. But I don't, because I'm the director. I don't. I still stop thinking about it for a long while. I still think about it.
Yeah.
And but no, I don't. And I think for actors, if you don't have something else you're going to, then that can be, that can be that way. And but the actors that are going from one thing to another, they don't really have time because they're going to go and become a member of another family.
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of moving from family to family. And if you have a little break between families, that's okay. And around here, most of the people who work all the time, that's kind of the way it is for them. They kind of shift around in different groups. I'm very specific with who I work with at this point in time. But it's not because I choose to be so much. It's just because it's the convenience of it. And again, I want the show to be the best it can, because I want the audience to be able to walk away with their needs met. And that's all of our responsibility. And I'm saying to the audience, the director, here's a show that I feel so strongly about that I believe you're going to really enjoy. Yeah. And the writer believes that this is important for you to know. It's a piece of information for you to think about, to you consider. So, we're going to do the very best we can to do that. And you can do that without, being on the nose of. One of the characters, Dale, actually has a line in it. She says, the woman says, I don't feel like I can never do enough. And she goes, of course you don't. That's what we are. That's what women are. Women never can feel they're not even allowed to. We
Hmm.
can never do enough. It can never be enough.
Right.
And
Yeah.
every woman in that theater went, "Oh God, is that the truth? That's the truth." you know,
Yeah.
and that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And that's why we do what we do. So yeah, we can't do it without an audience. I mean, we can do films,
Well,
but
yeah.
Julie Roberts did her films, and she went to Broadway, and it was a disaster for her. And
Really.
at the Obies, she appeared there, and she apologized to the
Really.
theater community. Yeah,
Wow.
I so apologize. I came from film acting. I had no idea about the craft of stage, how incredibly wonderfully talented you people are,
Hmm.
how wonderful you do what you do. I I apologize.
Well, I mean,
and she
it's,
was
I think that
she,
goes back to something I said earlier about, people like Al Pacino going back to theater every few years because you have to be able to do it live, but you also have to be able to roll with something that goes wrong. You have to make it work. And there are challenges on stage that film actors will not know how to deal with unless they're trained to.
exactly. Because it's a craft. I saw an interview with Jack Lemmon once, and he was talking about, people kind of realize this is a craft. If I did Shakespeare's To Be or Not to Be in real life, exactly the way Shakespeare would do it, it would look like this. He
Mm-hmm.
puts his hand on his chin, he looks down, and he doesn't say a word
Mm-hmm.
because that's what Hamlet would do. He's talking in his head.
Right. Right.
His soliloquy, to be or not to be, that's in his head. I'll have these players here play the. He's That's in his head.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's the craft of acting.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
what we're doing. We're
Mm-hmm.
bringing that inner life out, that objective process. We're putting it on the table for you to see. And if the writer's done their job, they've hit all the beats, the emotional, biological things we have to go through as we process these different, you know, emotional moments.
Right.
Where we're hurt or we're angry or we're vengeful or we kill somebody. So, yeah, it's powerful stuff. And actors are the tool, they are the voice, they are the people who bring it to life.
Mm-hmm.
They are a special, special group of people. And I
Absolutely.
can't say how much I love working with them. It's awesome.
I'm so glad you get to do that. And for all the people that have been in your audiences, whether it be in a theater that shows a movie or a theater that has a live play in front of them, thank you for all that you've brought to them because I have no doubt that you've brought a lot of joy to a lot of people over the years.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. One of the elements of this play is ripples, the ripples we cause in people's lives
Mm.
that we don't even realize. We have effects. People call you up and go, "Oh, remember me? Yeah, well, yeah, I know. Yeah, well, I remember you, man, because what you did, it changed my life."
Yeah.
It's
And
like,
and most of the time we
wow.
don't know it because people
Yeah.
unless it's circumstance, most of the time we don't know how we've affected someone else. But if you're always doing your best, then
With the,
you run the best chance of affecting people in a positive way.
I think if you're doing it to your highest integrity,
Yes. Yes,
that's
exactly.
that's the goal
That's right.
to
Well,
me.
John, thank
Yeah.
you so much. Hang on for me for 1 minute if you would. For you guys
Okay.
listening, I think I'm probably going to break this into two episodes that'll run on the 8th and 9th consecutively. And of course, John, I'll send you over the links when that's ready. But thank you so much
Great.
for coming back to the show. Anytime you want to have a chat, my friend, you are welcome here. And as you can see, it's a pretty safe space.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much, Scott. I enjoy it. I enjoy being with you. You are very open and you listen well.
Well, thank you. And it's, I have to say too, before I wrap up, I have to say it's really nice that you and I have met in person because I think you get a different sense of a person when you've been around their energy and in their presence. And I remember when I met you, it was kind of a crazy, one of those crazy Los Angeles nights. And I just immediately, I'm like, I really like this guy.
Oh, wow.
Just
Thank you.
right off the bat. So definitely
Thank you.
come back anytime you like. And for you guys listening, thank you so much. If you're in Sedona, check out Sedona Theater. And if you're not, just check out theater wherever you are. Every time I've
Right.
been, there's always something I walk away with that I didn't have when I walked in. And it's a well worthwhile experience. And if you can get around, Ticketmaster's 90% fees, then you'll do okay. But for that case, we've got some good stuff coming up. And speaking of Jack Lemmon, I've got a Jack Lemmon related episode coming up. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you guys on the next episode of the HaskinCast Podcast. Cheers.